And welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Yeti, and this is Yeti Talks. This is where we get down in the weeds, talking with game developers and their projects. Today, I have Matthias. Am I saying that right?
I'm 100% correct. Yeah.
Really? Okay. I am going to give myself a gold sticker
it.
for that. And you are working on a game called Riptide.
Yes.
So I was able to check out your website. It's ferociousindustries.com/Riptide, and it's got a lot of footage, a lot of pictures, and it looks like a pretty good dev blog to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah.
The game looks super interesting. Can you tell me a little bit, introduce the game to me, and tell me a little bit about the background, what got you started with it?
For sure, yeah. So this actually is the reason I got into game dev. So one day, I've always been into games myself, RPGs especially, story-based games. It used to be like strictly fantasy RPGs, you know what I mean? The nerdy Lord of the Rings style stuff. Then I don't know, I fell really in love with the way they could tell stories. So, Last of Us, a lot of horror games, when they tell a story in a certain way, I'm just like, oh my God, this is a masterpiece. But the reason I started game dev, I sat down one day, watched Blender videos and Unity videos, and I said, okay, hold the hell on. I can just, am I allowed to say?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay. I said, hold on. I can just sit at my computer where I am all the time anyway and make video games. Get out of here. Right? I've always been into art, drawing and painting and stuff like that, and carpentry, just making stuff. So I was like, this is like, I'm going to do this. So, obviously it was a very long, rough learning road. About 7 years I've been doing this now.
Wow.
And so I actually, the first thing I tried to make was this, and obviously it looked like a toddler drew something and you put it on screen. And so anyway, but it got me really excited. I was like, I can't believe I could get this far, even though it was almost nothing. I was like, I can't believe I can get this far and do this. I really, no one ever, nothing ever had brought that in front of me and said you could make games. So anyway, that really excited me, and I started learning the way I was supposed to, I guess, or the way I thought I was supposed to. And mostly got really good at 3D modeling and animating. Programming was a very tough. So this is like the long version, but essentially I've created this game 5 times throughout my dev career. Yeah, so on the site you see dev version 3, 4, and 5. Those are the last
I do see that.
So essentially I would create so much of the game and learn so much that I would say all wrong. Right? Like once I had, let's say, a light bulb going off, I would say, this is all wrong. I need to go back to the drawing board. And I would. And now I think that was a really important thing in my dev career, because I'm being able to do that, when you have, say, hundreds of hours poured into a project, being able to just be like, scrap this, we can do something better, and go right back from scratch. So I've done that 5 times with this game, and I'm planning on doing it another time, to be honest. But so it basically, started out with, love for playing Gothic, Skyrim, Witcher, that kind of thing, and creating my own story around it. I've always loved Marvel too, and I thought it would be cool if there was like a, a Lord of the Rings kind of style of that, where a lot of the heroes were superheroes, but in a medieval, magical kind of setting.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so a lot of the story is based off of that stuff.
You're doing both the animation and the programming. It sounds like you kind of picked both of those up as you were learning.
Yeah, I'm actually a jack of all trades game dev, and with Unity, I can do absolutely anything. I've actually done everything in this project myself every time.
Or would you say you picked up one skill quicker than the other, or did they equally have their own challenges?
They all equally had their own challenges, but at the same time, I got through the challenges in the 3D art and animation so much easier, because I think it was a lifetime of I wouldn't say I was an artist all my life, but I was an art hobbyist per se my whole life. So
okay.
It was a lot easier for me to be patient with it, say, rather than coding, where about like my first 2.5 years in coding, I was just copying and pasting stuff going, I don't know what this means, but it works, so screw it, right? And after many years of coding, some stuff started, you have little epiphanies here and there, and then you start programming yourself, and it all kind of comes together.
Did you ever look into going to a formal educational setting to pick up more skills, or did it ever cross your mind, or are you just like, nah, screw that, I'm going to stick to self-learning?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually signed up and started a. This is right when COVID hit, so it was my first time in online school, but it was called Video Game Art and Design.
Okay.
And I had been using Blender and Unity for 4 years, and I was pretty happy with my progression as a 3D artist. Like I was pretty happy with where I was. So I joined that program hoping for programming knowledge, programming,
Right.
education. And about a year and a half into the program, where we never opened a computer program, right? We were literally drawing pictures and learning art history for a year and a half. I just started asking around. I was like,
Yes,
what's
tuition.
the end goal of this? Yeah. And it was really expensive, right? So I was like, what's the end goal here? What are we going to learn? And they said, well, you're going to learn how to 3D model. It's just video game art. You're going to learn how to 3D model and how to do pixel art. And I was like, wow, I need to rethink what I'm doing with my time. So then, honestly, in that moment, I did actually drop out of that course and I went back to self-teaching. But right now, last year actually, and this is like late in the game, and I only did it because it was a full scholarship. But we have something
Okay.
called Tech ML in this province right now, and they're offering scholarships to people with tech backgrounds. I'm thinking because Canada's kind of starving for techies, right?
What
So it
kind
is
of?
software development.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it is software development. So we're learning all kinds of different programming languages. I'm learning the basis and the foundations that I should have learned long, long ago, right? That I kind of thought I knew after a while, but it's solidifying my knowledge, and it's been really fun so far. We've learned Python, HTML, JavaScript. Yeah, it's going really well.
Yeah, Python has to be my favorite out of all of them. I think primarily because of the simplicity of it, relatively speaking. And then they have Python Gaming, which is kind of, if you want to make games with Python, they have a whole subset for just that world. And I think it's really
Oh, I
cool.
didn't even know that.
Yeah, I got a
So,
3D printer and I got into
oh, gotcha.
Python, messing around with an Arduino and stuff like that. But I never went 100% in it. So it's like I'd find myself messing around for a few months and then I'd black out for a few months and then try to go back to it and be like, I forgot everything. How did I do this? This is really cool. I built this. Like, my,
Yeah, and that's like I got lucky there, right? That has happened to me, but there was like years and years where I was at my desk for 10 to 15 hours a day, not missing a
wow,
day, right?
that's
Yeah.
some impressive dedication. How are you balancing your passion with just life in general? Do you take these skills and to an 8 to 5 anywhere, or are you? What kind of work are you doing?
So I did for a couple of years. So initially, I basically had school funding, and I used that for 2 years. Even though I only did the this sounds bad, but even though I did the program for a year and a half and dropped out, I got 2 years of funding out of
Okay.
that, and kind of just coasted off of that. But then I started, yeah, I started reaching out and making up resumes and looking and portfolios and looking for jobs in 3D, and I found one that was really awesome. I love the guys. The project was really fun. I was the only dev for like a month and a half, and the game was an MMORPG. So I created like a huge foundation for that. Well, it wasn't, there was no polish, but it was such a massive amount of systems,
Yeah.
short span of time, and they had never made games before. They were just passionate guys with a bunch of money, and they were like, it was so much fun, man. I was screen sharing 8 hours a day. They were blown away. They loved it, and yeah, it was a blast. But unfortunately, we hired on some more help. Everything got messy, and they ran out of money. you
Yeah.
know,
Too many hands in the
and
cookie jar gets mess.
exactly, yeah. Like a lot of the systems, honestly, just got like they were, nothing against the other devs. They were really just trying to improve them and make them way more complex than I had. But yeah, a lot of things just ended up getting kind of twisted up, and,
Yeah.
and they wanted to go back to the drawing board, which I suggested many, many times, and I think they made the right move. I think they're still developing that actually, or at least one of them. But yeah, so I did that for a little bit, and then there was another project that came along after called Fiena, and I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about this, but it was a brilliant idea. This girl she was a teacher and she taught Spanish,
Hmm.
and so she wanted to create a 3D third-person video game that taught you Spanish, and it was so cool. It was like a Pokemon kind of thing, where you
Okay.
had a little animal buddy, and you were in like the Andes, and you had to actually hold down a button on your keyboard, have an active microphone, and speak Spanish into the microphone to even like address NPCs within range, so they could
Wow.
talk to you and stuff like that. Yeah, I can't. I don't know how much I can talk about it, but it was an incredible idea. That was a lot of money, and now, to answer your question, how am I balancing my passion with life in general? Now I have a full-time job at a restaurant. I don't like. You know, I've got a car with payments and I got an apartment that I got to pay for. So there's that. I'm also in the programming school, and I do sell my asset. Like I sell a lot of stuff that I make because that's the skill that I did choose to stick with most of all was 3D art, right? So I think I've gotten very, very good at that. And so the last couple of years, I've just been uploading stuff to Unity Asset Store, Unreal Engine Marketplace, and Sketchfab, and that's become a pretty fruitful passive income.
Have you given any free items away, or are you just mostly?
Lots. Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
So that was my problem initially, right? When I was first uploading stuff years
Yeah.
and years ago, it was all free. I just wanted to see people using it. I just wanted to see the 5-star reviews and people being happy about it, right? I didn't care. I was like, here you go. Tell me what you think. And I entered this business program a couple of times actually. It was 2 summers long. And every single time they would sit down and they'd say, "What's your stuff?" I'd show them and they go, "What is the matter with you?" They'd be like, "Are you crazy? You're giving all your stuff away for free."
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah." And I got a lot of free games and stuff, right? Like it was really, I just didn't care. I just wanted people to see it and use it and play it. But I don't think they got that in the business program. And they ended up making it worth it for me with the asset stores.
That's
Putting
good.
a reasonable price on stuff. Yeah.
I think that's great. You got that experience with working with these other developers and watching what it's like to go from level 1 to level 10. It's not, you can't
It was so good for me, man. Yeah.
yeah, like an algorithm, you can't just change one variable and say, okay, the number of employees, we're going to times 10. That doesn't end up changing the other elements of the algorithm. And so if you start hiring more people on, it complicates the whole system. I mean, you got to train them, you got to bring them into your culture, you have to show them your files. I worked as a Scrum coach for an application company, and when I started there, they had a single dev doing everything, and he didn't have a dev branch. Everything was a master of production, and he was just saving everything to one file. When they started hiring more people, he hadn't diversified that yet, so there were immediately issues with the second guy going in and making small changes, and I would wake up and there'd be 30 pissed off customers because they were doing a service as a software. And so with that being a live environment, people felt the impact right away. And because
what a nightmare.
Yeah, and they don't know the consequences of anything they change. You change a line, and it could have a big impact on something way down.
When there's one coder, yeah, like it's his master file. Like this could be connected to that. This could be connected to 25 other things, and I totally get it. That's embarrassing almost.
He built that out of his perspective, and so then he has to start designing things in a cooperative perspective.
Yes, yeah.
It's just a whole engineering challenge on its own to scale up application development, whether that's video games or something that is sold enterprise to enterprise, or crap, even if you worked at Microsoft and was a developer for Office 365. I mean, that's going to be one of the more mature experiences, and you kind of get thrown in the blender and told everything you're supposed to do and everything you're not supposed to do. But it's it's a very fascinating topic. I mean, it takes experts just to sit back and watch what's going on to help give their feedback.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I'm sure you understand like the importance of what he should have done there. But it's like, I still see codes as works of art, right? Like when it's one guy and he writes a gigantic code and it works, that's mind blowing. But at the same time, if you're working for a company and that company wants that program or software to work for a long time, like what happens if you go outside and get hit by a bus and you don't have any notes or any comments or anything, any documents about what you wrote? Like people are just going to be they'll have to scrap it.
Yeah, they'll have to build it from ground up for someone new. It reminds me of Windows, like Windows 95, 98, Windows XP. Everyone who worked on that product is gone or dead, and they don't know how to fix it. So they have to have an end of life for that product, and just like now the next one's coming out 7 or Windows 8, and it's. If people don't know how to go in and do things, they have to make a completely new operating system, and that's part of the reason why
I
they
have
keep
never
changing.
thought about that before. That's actually, even based off of what I just said about getting hit by a bus, I've never thought of that before. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think Apple does it kind of in a different light. They try to keep the names more unified, but ultimately it's a similar experience. I mean, it's just what it is today versus what it was 30 years ago. They would have no idea how to work on that program. They may look at it on a reflection basis, like, oh, that was cool how you did that, or oh, I see that line and that makes sense, but you wouldn't be able to put all that together in a Monday through Friday working environment.
Right. Yeah. There was a team of people that are not there anymore. That's so crazy.
And then if you think about it even further down the road, I mean, imagine if computer science, goes hundreds of years in the future, the year 2500, people are going to be looking back on us and think that, oh, the first people watching the internet looked at them in rocks. Like they're not going to understand how we did the internet in the early years. And if we keep going as a society and don't blow ourselves up, 1,000 years or greater, that myth is going to be more interesting.
Yeah.
I digress.
Python, like they'll be fossils, man. Fossils.
Yeah. So the footage on your video, I had watched one that you kind of went through and did a demo of your game, and you were doing a walkthrough, and I found it really interesting. It reminded me of a blend. You had mentioned Skyrim, but other games came to mind, like Ark, Reign of Kings, Rust, Kingdom Come. I don't know if you ever played or saw Kingdom Come.
Actually, all those games. I love that you just said that.
Yeah, it became a personal favorite of mine. I was really, really surprised to fall in love with Kingdom Come because I'm such a multiplayer minded kind of person. I love interacting with real people, mostly because of the intelligence difference most of the time between NPC and real people. And it's just fun interacting in that environment. But if you can create a game where the NPC can surprise you in fun ways, it adds to that element. And so Kingdom Come just took me by surprise, and I probably played it more than any other single player game. Unfortunately with Skyrim, I know all about the culture, I know all about the game. I'm surrounded by friends who played it till it died. But for me, I remember buying it, installing it, and I ran up a mountain with a horse, and I just kind of ran around the map, and I just stopped playing. Like, I don't know why, but I wasn't able to attach myself to the game, and it was a complete opposite experience as something like Kingdom Come. But there's so many cool things about Skyrim I never got to experience. I just couldn't find that hook. But it's a really deep game, and it's cool. So I like to see where this is going. Reign of Kings was, I don't know if you heard of that, but that was it's kind of like Rust. It came out in 2014, 2015, and it was a server shard that you and like 60 friends could join and build out your houses and your maps, and there was no objective, but there was resources you could collect. And I went in and did this whole RPG element as a server admin and created these factions and set up trade systems and became kind of like a referee to keep it going. But then the devs just one day announced that they were going to stop working on it, and then everyone just kind of left.
It looks very like Mountain Blade.
Yeah, exactly.
Like early days Mountain Blade graphics.
There wasn't anything NPC related. It had kind of a Game of Thrones-esque element to it because there was a single throne in the middle of the map. And basically, if you sat on that throne, the map crowned you king. And I don't think you got any special... You may have gotten something certain from that, but other than a title and an actual animated crown... So we kind of based the game around that concept and set up rules, and it was really fun. So it was sad to see the developers turn left. And I noticed that a lot with indie games where they may see a certain level of success and then they just, I don't want to say jump ship, but they move on to a different project maybe prematurely. And did you ever play DayZ?
No, but I've seen that game. I actually watch a lot of games lately instead of buying them.
Yeah, hey, that's I think more reasonable. Gives you a good sense. I think half the games I buy, I'm like, am I past the 2-hour limit on Steam yet? Like,
right? Yeah.
And so DayZ was officially modded from a game called Arma 2. They basically made a zombie. Yeah. They made this guy Dean something. I forgot his name, but he made it into a zombie perspective, and it was really fun. It blew up overnight, basically. the actual studio that makes Arma brought Dean on either as a consultant or a real employee. I'm not sure, but he went on to develop a standalone product using Arma 2 engine, and then it took so long that they adopted the Arma 3 engine, and it went on for years. And before bases came out on the game, Dean left, and he left it to the company that makes Arma, and they kind of had a small team of people that are actually still developing it to this day. I went on the Steam store and saw a recent update, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And because all the reviews is the same problem that we had in 2015, which was hackers or people who buy script kiddies, as we would call them, and they would go in and, I can see through everything, or my shot will never miss, or and I was streaming back then on Twitch, and so I was a small-time streamer, right? 10 concurrent viewers at any given time, but I still had what they call stream snipers, and I would join a DayZ server, and then people would specifically just hunt me down and kill me, just because that's what humans like to do, make other humans miserable.
I've never experienced that, to be honest, but watching Twitch streamers, I see it, and it's like, man,
so
toxic.
I
would actually cringe. Look, God.
So that makes me think of, when it comes to modding and your, Skyrim, you said did you get a good amount of hours playing Skyrim?
Yeah, I was going to say, Skyrim for me definitely hit a plateau, but I played, like when it first came out, I was like, this is, because I was pretty young then. I'm 30 now. So when Skyrim came out, I don't know, what was I, 15, 16? Maybe older. But when it first came out, I turned it on. I was even like showing my mom. I was like, look, there's a dragon. He's coming out of nowhere.
It came out 2011.
That mammoth on fire. 2011, okay, 12 years ago. So I would have been 17 or 18 then.
Okay.
And I was just ecstatic with the game. And I ended up playing it all the way through. I think I almost 100% of the game.
Oh, wow.
And like got everything, all the little side quests. I even Googled like the secrets and stuff. But it didn't take a long time. I might have been finished with that within like a year. Right, and every single time I've wanted to turn it on again and play, I play for 5 minutes, and I'm like, I actually am not into this at all.
Just at some
point. But the first time I played, I went absolutely ham.
Did you ever think about contributing to a mod of Skyrim? They came out with infinite amount of mods. Developers just coming out of the woods and making graphical mods or adding different skins or different play elements. Maybe not even just Skyrim, but have you ever thought about contributing to an existing game as a modder?
Yeah, actually, not Skyrim, but when I first, so this is weird. I actually did 3D when I was 15, in a program called Wings 3D, and it was when Mountain Blade, like I was really obsessed with that game. Mountain Blade was like before Warband, like it was like version 0.8. That one it was really, really early, and I think it was only like 3 or 4 people making it. Anyway, I looked up what they used to make the 3D models, and it was a program called Wings 3D. And so I started messing with that. So when I picked up Blender when I was 23, I knew what vertex, edges, faces, geometry. I knew so much about that already. And once I knew how to navigate, moving stuff around, rotating, scaling, it came to me so quick. But when I was using that Wings 3D program, I actually made like a couple helmets and I think a couple of swords and put them in the game. I figured out how to actually put them in the game as my own little mod, but I never like posted it anywhere. That's literally the extent of anything I ever modded.
Yeah. I'm baffled.
Well, I shouldn't say that. Because I don't know if you know about the RTS Age of Empires 2.
Oh, yeah. How do you know about it? You're a few years younger than me. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
My dad was actually really into games. Like he was a military guy. He was kind of quiet, introvert, but man, when a video game came out, he would be like, "Will." My name is actually William Matthias Young, but anyway, my family calls me Will. So my dad would be like, "Will, come here." I'd go over, and he'd be like, "This is
William.
Diablo. Let's play Diablo." Yeah, William. And he'd say, "This is Diablo. Let's play Diablo," and just be me and him like in the dark.
Okay.
Hiding from mom, because
what was that, Diablo 2? I think
he was slightly embarrassed. Diablo 1, Diablo 2, he introduced me to,
1,
and also, Age of Empires 1 and Age of Empires 2. He introduced me to 4 of those games, and I'm still to this day obsessed with the remastered and definitive editions.
I still remember being about 10 years old, maybe, I don't know, 10, 11, and at a summer camp, and I made a couple friends, and it was there was a magazine. I forget, one of the gamer magazines back in the day. So we'll call it PC Mag or whatever. And it was talking about Age of Empires 2 that was coming out that year. And I was so excited. And just because I had played Age of Empires 1, it was one of my first games I ever played on a computer as a kid. And that intro video where they do like the 3D animations of people going to war. And then like it had
Sword and 2?
What's that?
You mean? Oh, in Age of Empires 1, the first video.
Yeah, like the intro video, and they had it kind of showed you how they aged, and then they showed the guy that died, and then he turned into a skeleton. And I love the game from that point.
Vaguely remember that.
Yeah, you go back and watch it. It'll bring back some serious nostalgia. But I played that kind of serendipitously, and then just fell into seeing Age of Empires 2 coming out. And I completely nerded out. I think we're at literally a surf camp in California, and I'm just like, look at this game, guys! Like, fuck surfing,
right? Yeah, it kind of happened to me too. I feel like I played Age of Empires 1 like 4 times, and then Age of Empires 2 dropped, and yeah, I was just in shock, pretty much.
There was after Age of Empires 2, there was another one that I played for a long time. It was called Empire Earth, and
dude,
yeah. And that was really fun to play. I think it was one of my first online experiences for RTSs. And there was another game called Total Annihilation. Did you guys?
I don't know.
Okay, so you're on a machine planet, and it's like so far in the future from humans that only the technology exists, right? It's self-replicating, and they're kind of in this perpetual war between the factions because they don't. That's just what the machines know. They're like, red needs to kill blue and blue needs to kill red. Okay, and they can self-replicate, but there's no more humans. They all died. So you take over as the machines, and it's very StarCraft-esque. Age of Empires, collect resources and fight the enemy. But it was one of the first games back in the 90s and early 2000s that allowed for unlimited population if your machine could handle it.
Oh my god.
So Age of Empires, had like a 200 population cap?
Yeah, I think it was 150 in the first one, actually.
And so, but this one, it's like if you could find a machine that can run it, they'll let you do it. And I just remember having LAN parties with friends in like 2003, and we bought this really cheap router that started smoking. Playing that game, it was
oh my god,
it was not good.
But the what? Oh, the router for
it was it was like a Netgear off-brand. Early Walmart was like $25, 2003. It did not last. It had 8 ports, but we plugged in 3 computers, and it literally started smoking after a couple hours.
Holy shit! Total annihilation. I mean, that's a brave move to just say unlimited population.
Yeah, and
you literally just break machines all over the world.
Their RTSs are really fun games. I love strategy games, and I never played Diablo 1, but I did play Diablo 2, and then when Diablo 3 came out, we played it. I think that was like around the same time Skyrim got released.
I feel lucky that I played Diablo 1, and I'll tell you why. Because if you go from 2 to 1, you can't run in the first game. Huh. You can only walk insanely slowly. So
they really try to pace it.
Without having the running in 2, it didn't feel that bad. Like, it was still a cool game. But once you play 2 and then you try to play 1, it's just like, oh my god, I want to literally leave. So that how slow the movement was actually pretty messed up. But other than that, it was Diablo. It's a cool game.
And then Diablo 3, Diablo 4 eventually came out. I don't know if you played. Did you ever pick up 4 and play with your dad, or?
Never played 4. Actually, my dad passed away a few years ago before 4 came out. Actually.
Oh,
but
sorry to hear that.
3 we tried. It was a long time ago. 3 we tried. He wasn't into it at all, and I got into it a little bit, but it still wasn't even close to what 1 and 2 were for me. And 4, I just watched streams of that, and I thought it was actually pretty. Like, they went backwards a little bit, which I liked, because 3 it did not hit the mark for me, right?
It was like
and what was the mobile game they made? Immortal? That was.
Oh yeah, no one remembers that.
That almost made me cry. That was awful.
The live reaction of that announcement still has a place in history for YouTube. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
What, you guys don't have cell phones?
Yeah, there was literally an argument with the crowd. That's how bad the
it's like was. Me at work. It's just arguing for no reason at all.
Just immediately trying to defend what he just said. It was pretty crazy.
I think there's
That's what
people.
Blizzard turned into.
Well, there's people that go up on stage. They're maybe higher level, but still middle management, and they're there to introduce the game, and they can't change things on the fly.
That's true. Yeah, I'm sure he was in a very crappy spot. No doubt.
So you keep coming back to working on this game. You said this was 4 or 5, the 4th or 5th version of your attempt at making this. I love
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I
that
could
aspect.
call it 4 because the first was such a joke. But yeah, it's the 5th time. I'm
Where
totally
do you think that this current version you're on now is going to be the one that you end up releasing, or is it going to be still down the road? Like, how long do you think before the game goes live?
Oh my god. So this version here, what I'm like, my plan is now to actually get some sort of a demo. Like for what had in that video, I have done a pretty crazy amount of work on it since that. And I actually have some volunteer voice actors. Some of them are already actually in the game.
Okay.
NPCs for quests and stuff. And so there's like a lot of the map is laid out. A lot more of the map is laid out, I should say. There's some wildlife like wolves and boars, stuff like that you can fight. There's a few bandits. So you can actually. I don't know if you ever played Gothic or Gothic 2.
No. I keep thinking Batman when you say Gothic for some reason.
Oh, no. It was actually a Piranha Bytes game. Like if you know the Elix games now, Elix 1 and 2.
Okay.
They're not insanely popular. Piranha Bytes is like 30 guys over in Germany.
Huh.
But the Gothic 1 and 2 they're kind of
Wow.
I don't know what
2005.
the word is. Yeah. Gothic 1 and 2, I don't know what the word is, but a lot of gamers, like a lot of probably people our age too, or like, 30s, 40s, even late 20s would say that Gothic is their favorite games.
Wow. Okay.
And like I hear a lot of streamers who even haven't played that just say, basically that kind of thing. But they know it's what is the word I'm trying to think of? Like this diehard kind of cult classic, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, it's like it wasn't insanely popular worldwide, but the people who know it are like, yeah, that's the best game ever made. Not that that's true, but right, it was. Oh my god, man, it struck such a chord with me. I know the whole game like the back of my hand, and I'll still pick it up and play it for 5 hours straight. But anyway, that was the main template for the world and the NPCs and the wildlife in Riptide. So essentially, the wildlife have in the programming, basically they have teams, right? So wolves and coyotes and stuff like that would be on a team, and then say sheep and pigs and stuff like that, the domestic animals would be on another team.
Sure.
And if a sheep got within the vicinity of something on the wolf team, the wolf and possibly its entire pack would then attack the sheep and kill it.
Huh.
Right. So
Okay.
that's how the wildlife that bleeds into the NPCs too, right? Like if a bandit gets too close to I don't know, a farmer or a guard, they would literally fight each other to the death. Right. So it can be, it can be interesting how dynamic that is when you walk out into the world and they have like a roaming distance and a rabbit might run past, I don't know, a coyote and the coyote just chases it down and you can just watch that. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. But for the NPCs, they basically have this is actually really cool. And I think I spoke about this in the video, but the NPCs have a complete 24-hour routine that I can set, per character. So basically,
Yeah, I did see the scheduling. That was awesome.
Yeah, so I've actually got a few people in the game now set up to do that, and it is I gotta say it's really interesting. So they'll get up at a certain hour, like wake up out of their bed, walk out of their bed, maybe go sit at their table, drink, eat, then get up after a few minutes, and then go say to their job, like do their work. They have like a lunch break, an evening break, and then they'll go to bed. And you can interrupt them doing any of these things to talk to them or to fight them or to buy stuff from them.
Yeah.
And so far, it's all good. It's all working great.
How much resources would you say it takes from your overall game development to spin off individual schedules for NPCs like that?
Oh yeah. So it's sorry, yeah. So it's literally part of their AI code. So there's like a master AI code for each character or each piece of wildlife, say each mob. So I can even give a mob a job. That's
Wow.
sounds weird, but I could say like this wild boar is going to wake up at a certain hour, go over to the lake at a certain
Yeah.
hour and drink, and then go back to this rock and lay down next to it for however many times. But because there's a 24-hour clock, there's a day and night system, right? So the sun comes up and goes down, and that's what they all read off of, and it only triggers their change in job or their change in say their state on the hour, right? So if like 8 o'clock is the hour that they wake up, 8 o'clock the code's triggered and they wake up and they go on to do something, right? So it's really not that hefty as long as I spread out. Like I can say 7:59, 7:58, and the clock will work, right?
Sure.
So as long as I spread them out, so it's not like 100 wolves, right? Well, there wouldn't be 100 wolves around you at once, but say it wouldn't trigger 100 characters at once
Yeah.
to do that, because that would probably be pretty taxing on the performance.
Do you?
And I'm
Is
trying
this
to find
also?
better ways to do this too. But
Well,
so
you
far
have
it's
a
working great.
yeah. You have a day and night system. Does it have a calendar as well, like which day of the week or what month it is?
Yeah, so I'm because of the software development school I'm in, interestingly enough, I found out how to do that. But so far in the game, it actually just counts the days that go by,
Okay.
right? And the quests also track that. So say someone says, meet me in this location at 8 o'clock in 5 days,
Okay.
right? It'll actually track if you missed that or not.
Oh, nice.
Basically, it'll track how close you're getting to it and stuff like that.
How long do they have before that? Like, if they say meet me at 8 o'clock, how long do they have before the NPC leaves?
Yeah, so that's not actually. I haven't actually tested that yet. But I
Okay.
would give it definitely like 5 hours or something like that, something reasonable, right? But based on the code, that's something that would be occurring for sure.
It'd be funny to see, like, on Mondays, you program the AI to, like, a certain percentage of them just to be angry and pissed off,
Yeah.
and like if you just talk to them on Monday, they're not going to be helpful, and if anything,
Yes,
that
and
they
like
might
that's
be
the kind of
destructive. Like,
yes, yeah. Like if you walk into a pub or something or a tavern,
yeah.
right, and it's just the guy at the bar is in a bad mood and he tries to fight you.
But yeah, if you go
actually
back
love
the
that.
next
That
day,
is something
they're
I
they're in a
never
better
want.
mood or something.
Yeah. So one thing going off of that I definitely want to have is like on certain days of the week, like going into a tavern because I want to have live music. A lot of my friends are into music and bands and theater and stuff like that. So I would love to have like live music at certain taverns in certain
Huh.
cities. So if you say you went in on a Tuesday at a certain hour, there would be a band or a solo singer or something like that people, the NPCs actually talk about and want to see, that kind of thing. Like this sounds so massive, but once the code's in place, it's just basically one after the other. But I thought that would be really really cool. Like say you wanted to see a certain band, you could ask, you could actually ask the bartender and he'd tell you that they're playing Saturdays at this time,
Oh, that'd be cool.
right? And going off of that, yeah, absolutely, people could add a pissed off guy in the bar on a Monday.
Get out of
How
here.
long do I work?
One of the things
Yeah.
I noticed in your video, you were talking about, putting on rings and the ability to see them or not see them. I think that's really interesting that you added to it. I couldn't help but to think of a comparison. I recently picked up Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh my
And
god, amazing.
yeah, have you played any Boulder Gate series or anything like that?
My dad actually showed me that before Diablo 1, and I didn't play it a lot. But I did play Baldur's Gate 2 like in my early 20s
Yeah.
for some random reason, right? I think I had a PlayStation emulator or something or a GameCube emulator on my computer, and that's how I played it. But I liked it a lot. And then Baldur's Gate 3, that one I didn't buy. I just watched it.
I think it just
Co-Turner
came
did
out
that.
recently.
Yeah.
It's only a newer game, and I didn't think I was going to have this much fun with it. It's very D&D esque, so everything you do has a virtual dice roll. But
Yeah.
I love that kind of concept because it's kind of bled into my real life. I'm sitting there in my office, and somebody walks in, and we talk about something. In my mind, I'm like, I rolled a 10 or higher, so I guess I'm going to win this conversation.
That's hilarious.
But they have their apparel, and it gets really detailed. They spent probably too much time on the details of the stuff that you can wear, the gear, the clothing, the equipment.
I'm not gonna lie. That's what I was so mesmerized about watching was how detailed
Yeah.
the clothing and stuff and the equipment system.
So like you may have head crowns or rings and necklaces and all this other jewelry, but I noticed it wasn't detailed super well. So like I could put on a ring And yeah, I could see it if I looked hard enough, but it would often clip with other things. So if I had gloves
Yeah.
on, you would never see the rings. And that may be obvious, but a little disappointing. Because they give you like 3 ring slots, and okay, well, these crappy gloves are covering them up. Or with the headbands, there would be like these gold headbands you could wear, silver, gold, bronze, whatever. But some of the characters, unless you were bald, the hair would often cover them up almost entirely. So it was kind of
Uh,
hard to see. And clearly, they didn't want to glorify what you were wearing. So everything seemed very subtle, very artistically quiet, but it was there. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. So I was excited to hear you talk about putting rings on fingers. I'm like, yes.
yeah.
You
So
know,
actually, to go off of that, did they have character customization where you could change the size of the character's hands or fingers?
No, not that depth. It was only. I'm pretty sure it was just visual. Like you want to customize the face, the hair. I don't even think they had body weight. They had 3
Okay,
different body builds, so it was like slim,
gotcha.
medium, bulky, but that was it.
Yeah, so I believe I have solved what you're talking about. But I thought that like they could be different models though, the body types. But the way I've done it is with blend shapes or shape keys. So basically you can customize your character down to like sizes, the size of his feet, the size of his hands, chest, butt, everything. And the rings, like everything that attaches to the character, every piece of apparel, they inherit every single one of those shape keys. So basically, no matter what you've chosen for the character's hands, I can put the ring on your finger. Just take that blend shape, totally normal. Ring goes on your finger. If you're wearing, I can actually check if you're wearing gloves
Hmm.
and increase the dilation of the ring on your finger so that it's
Wow.
over the glove. Yeah, and it's yeah that's one way to do that. But interesting enough, I have never thought about tiaras or crowns with hair. Because what I do for the hair now, like say if you're wearing a hood or a helmet, I just clip anything outside of the helmet or a hood model away, so it's invisible.
Sure.
So you can see your hair like underneath, but you can't see it outside. But I never thought of that with tiara. That's gonna be it's gonna be tricky.
Yeah, less obvious ones being like capes, shoe decorations, ankle bracelets. I guess Boulder Gate didn't do ankle bracelets, but there's an opportunity. If you're just
That's
trying to
cool,
throw
actually.
something
Yeah.
on for stats, like I get a buff for 3 agility if I put on this ring. Um, I've never noticed a rhyme or reason for the type of jewelry and the purpose. It's just any jewelry, like a ring, a crown, a shoe, a glove, an armor plate. It can be random, like plus whatever stat, plus strength, plus dexterity, plus
Yeah.
charisma. It's irrelevant.
That's a
And
really good point.
yeah, and so it's never been, hey, a ring gives you +3 strength because it hurts more when you punch someone. Like it's
Yeah.
just
So something I learned, like mostly Diablo 2, that like one of my I don't know the best thing about Diablo 2 for me was when I got really deep into it and started finding these unique items or rune words. And basically it has its own unique name that sounds like crazy badass, and all of the bonuses make total sense for what it is, right? And so I've tried to go off of that kind of thing. Let me just find an item here.
okay.
What did I call that ring? Yeah, so this basically makes you like a super druid, and
Huh.
it's a ring made out of like tree roots that has is holding like a glowing emerald.
Wow.
So it gives you like it grants you skills that you would normally get through. So the skill trees in this game work. I think like it's everything I ever wanted in skill trees personally. But the way the skill trees work is basically you join. Well, there's one for your heritage, and then when you join a guild, you get a skill tree with multiple different branches depending on what route you want to take. Um, so, but you can also find items that you can wear, like this ring, that no matter what guild you join, like say you joined like I don't know the berserkers and you have a bunch of axe and spear combat skills, you could put this ring on and actually get 2 skills that are part of the druid tree that you would never be able to get. Right, like root spear is on here and willow bark, which is like a buff.
And then when you take it off, it goes away, right?
When you take it off, it goes away. So basically, you have a 4th skill tree that's called bonuses. You
Okay.
click on that skill tree and you can activate or equip to your skill slots 1, 2, 3, and 4, whatever skills are part of your bonuses.
Uh,
Sometimes you get them from your spirit animal choice as well.
The word spirit animal. I've watched too many memes during the day.
I got zodiac signs here too. There's room for memes.
Well, that's great. This game, it looks like you gave it a mature rating. What was the reason behind that?
Yeah, so I want to like there's like the story is I think it's um dark and it's in some ways inspiring and stuff like that to me at least, until it gets out there and we see the truth of what it really is. But some stuff's just too much, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what exactly is going to make it into the story itself, but there's yeah, like, there's a lot of killing, there's some brutal words. There like I don't want to make people think I'm a psychopath or anything, but yeah, there's some pretty dark stuff, some pretty messed up stuff, and I wanted to allow that, if I needed to, you know, give the effect of what's going on with gore or cursing or whatever.
Sure.
I wanted to give myself that because The Witcher 3 I played and I loved, and that the story of that really, um, it inspired me to write Riptide a different way, like in a darker light. Dark Souls games too, actually, like the dark, gothic, grim, gruesome, screwed up kind of shit they get into in Dark Souls. And it made me really want to take that route with it. So I decided a long time ago, actually, that M was absolutely going to be the rating.
Would you say that the storyline is pretty developed, or how does that compare to just building the world out? How far along are you on the story?
So the story is more developed than anything else. I actually have like I gotta edit them a lot, but I have like 3 novels written on my computer right now,
Wow.
pretty much. Yeah, I started writing them before I actually started game dev.
Okay.
Now they're like nothing at all that they were 10 years ago, right? That's just how it's evolved. But it all started about 10 years ago. And when I actually first started game dev, that's when I started imagining these characters like the ones you see on the website. That's very few compared to what I actually have, but those were a few from Norwolf that I thought were cool. There's it's very developed. So essentially, it starts on the story starts on Earth. The game starts on a different planet, and it's the transition there is the reason it's called Riptide. So basically, there's like a European faction on Earth. There's some Nords, you would say. Then there's like some Arabian, Persian inspired Easterlings, and then there's also like the tropical islands in the South Guinea. So they're all, they all have the conflicts and whatnot, but there's some like I'm gonna call them supervillains and superheroes around, right? Like magic and stuff like that. And so one of the supervillains gets really kind of kicked while he's down by the king in Adan. That's like the European state. And he just gets crazy pissed off, and he finds this book that has a bunch of old wives' tales in it, and he starts hunting them all down. And some of them are bullshit, some of them are true. And this is actually something that the player will do towards the end of their game. That's going to be an end game kind of thing. But as he does that, he just sets some crazy stuff into motion, and basically these aliens from they're like sorcerers, right? So from like a couple planets away, have to come down. Some shit goes on, and they all have to leave the planet. So they end up doing this ritual that they can only do over oceans, and it's like a giant riptide, like a giant cyclone, and they all have to go inside. And when they do, it's a wormhole, and they pop out on another planet. So basically, they all call that, all the humans who don't know what the hell just happened call that event Riptide.
Huh. Yeah, I can imagine how much more fascinating that might be that long ago in chronological history.
Yeah, and that's the reason. Yeah, there's a lot of things. That's another reason for the M rating, right? Like a lot of them are just get screwed up over what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I gotcha. Do you see yourself bringing on additional team members? I know we kind of touched on this topic earlier, but at what point do you think you would expand the team?
Yeah, so I don't think I even answered that question before. I think I was starting to, but what I'm going to do with this version, the plan is to just finish a portion of it and put it out as like a proof of concept, and hopefully literally not even have to develop myself anymore. I would love to actually just don't even know get funding and sign a contract for a trusted and you know, skilled development team to just take it off my hands and build it with hopefully a little bit of my guidance, right? But that's like best case scenario.
Yeah.
If I can put this out and it really lands and people love it, worst case scenario, I get funded enough to hire 4 or 5 people to help me at least build a better foundation and get it kicked off a lot nicer than I have here. Even though I think this is pretty insane what you can do. Like all the crafting I can imagine is in this game right now and works.
Okay.
So that's kind of keeping me into it, right? And then the stuff with the NPCs, the quests, that's working. I don't know. Like there's some things that really keep pulling me back to this, but it's just the visuals of it. It's not what I always imagined. So I think I would go for this as a proof of concept and hopefully get good feedback to be able to develop it in a stronger light with the team. Absolutely. And when that's a really hard thing to answer now, just because of the full-time job and school. Because before that, I was working on it full-time, and I got to this point where I had a bunch of people volunteer to voice characters, and I started that. And then, life just got really expensive.
Well,
essentially.
I will say, if you need some extra voiceover help, always feel free to ping me. It's kind of some stuff.
Oh, you were on the list,
do.
Dude. Super appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's only going to be like 50 million NPCs, so no,
that's perfect.
as every passionate dev would say.
I can only imagine.
It'll be definitely room for more. Absolutely.
All those WAV files you got to attach somewhere, so that's tedious thinking about.
Need a separate PC for those.
Speaking of separate PC, what kind of computer do you have? What are you developing on?
Oh, it's absolutely monstrous.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, for what I do. So my dad is the last thing that he got me, basically. But it's a custom build. The tower was only like 3,800. It was a few years ago, and it's actually only a what is it, GTX or RTX 3060 Ti.
Okay. At least you got that
the
TI.
3090s. Yeah, but the 3090s were on the shelf at the time, and I don't know shit about hardware, to be honest. Like the guy who built this for me told me everything that I know right now, which is like the names of the parts, and that's it.
That's great.
But so the 3090 was on the shelf at the time. I shouldn't say that, but it was out at the time, but they were out of stock, so he couldn't get it. He told me this was the next best thing, and compared to what I was using before, I'd still be mind blown. So I was like, definitely do it. I don't know what the processor is. He got me something really good. I don't know. Honestly, this is just the best thing I've ever had as a PC. I had a lot growing up as a kid, but I never paid for it, right? Once I started paying for them, they were cheaper laptops.
Yeah, I got you. Laptops
it's the most incredible computer I've ever had.
Are a freaking joke.
For developing, yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you're doing more than Word or email, they're too expensive for what they offer. And even if you spend $4,000 on a laptop, you're not happy with it in 2 years. Whereas your 100%. Desktop, you got a 3060 Ti, despite your CPU and your everything else, you can likely pop in the latest generation graphics card with a 5-minute YouTube video and some driver installs, and you're off. So if they're still on, if we want to call the 3060 a third gen, they're still on the 4th gen. They skipped a whole year, so the 5th gen may come out the next year or so. I'm sitting on a 3070 Ti right now, and
nice. That might have actually been the one that he said was sold out that I couldn't get. I thought for some reason it was after 3060.
Yeah, 30.
That's how little I know. See?
Oh, it's all right. Unfortunately, I'm in IT, so hardware becomes kind of just natural to my memory. But 30. Did you open a ticket? That's like half of my language.
Oh God.
And so 3060, and then usually it goes 60s, 70s, 80s, and then the TI is like a buffer for like whatever version of that clock speed. And so 80s are usually the flagship models, and the 90s are kind of the let's see how far we can push this generation of hardware, period.
Okay.
And so it's pretty fascinating stuff. They've come a long way with it. I mean, before was 3060, 3070, there was the 20 series, and then there was the 10 series, and then before that it was like the 960, the 970, the 980. But that goes back years ago at this point.
It's for sure. It still blows my mind, to be honest. Like I think I have Bannerlord. I waited for that game for 11 fucking years. But Bannerlord, I turned on, and everything was on max, and it told me my computer was running at like 11% capacity, and I was like,
Oh, good.
what the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's way more powerful than I think I need. That's yeah, and it being a custom like that makes it so great because, like you said, I can literally unplug that 3060 and put something else in anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are some of the most swappable hardware. Looking at your game, do you think that there's any unique features that stand out from competitors in this kind of genre?
So that's always been a tough one to answer, and I know that is a problem. That's basically what I've come to with that. But I do think so. I think that the longer it takes to develop, the more that these things are just going to be, um, you know, get ahead of me, so to speak. But I think there's many different game loops where it's a survival game as well, right? You have to watch your thirst, hunger, and fatigue. Um, there's hunting, gathering, foraging, crafting. You can go fishing. The fishing is really fun too. There's a full system with that where you actually have to fight with the fish on the line. You can't go too tense and snap your line, or you
Okay.
can't go too loose, or they'll flop off. Right, and you have to buy different baits. There's different lures and stuff like that, and flies that actually attract different kinds of fish. And depending on where you fish and stuff like that, and what the weather is like, actually even affects what fish you catch. So I think there is definitely that one game loop. You can also have your own homes. Like if you walk into a shack in the woods where there's no guards around, kill the guy. A window pops up on the screen that you found an abandoned homestead. Do you want to make this your home? And you can fast travel there. Then right?
Wow.
So you could literally just not play the story. You could literally just hang out in the woods and be a survivalist, I guess.
Oh, if it were
And
that
then
easy
there's
in real life.
if only, right? Just go kill somebody
Yeah.
and take their house, right? But another cool thing is the same thing happens with pets and mounts. So if someone's riding a horse, you can kill them and not their horse, and walk up to the horse and interact with it, and it'll say you found an abandoned mount. Want to make
Nice.
this mount or send it to a stable, right? And then with pets, it's like say someone's walking around with a dog, and they somehow die. Like it doesn't have to be you. Like you could lead bandits over to them. The bandits could kill that person. You interact with the dog, and it says you found an abandoned animal, abandoned pet, and you can make it your own then. But yeah, so there's like Dark Souls is looking at game loops and stuff like that for different games, and Dark Souls game loop is kind of like you just go off into a direction, find a boss, kill it, or find a boss, die, repeat. That's what it said, I think,
Yeah.
which was pretty funny. But yeah, there's an aspect of that too. Like there's some, I wouldn't say like secret. I wouldn't say secrets, but yeah, there's some unique things that you can walk around and find, right? Like you just explore, find treasure, you
Yeah.
know. And there's not I guess kind of like Skyrim in that way, where you don't have an exact direction. You can just be, you can just live. But where you always have to, like, you can't just sit somewhere forever, right? You'll go thirsty or hungry and die. So I think that's cool. And there is swimming and diving as well. Like you could just, I don't know, you could just go for a swim.
Yeah. I saw the swimming.
But yeah,
That was great.
yeah, I think that'll be fun too. I've got like treasure and stuff like that, and shipwrecks under the water and stuff like that. So there's always the exploration aspect. Where there's multiple game loops, I think it will feel a little, maybe not, like I'm saying, Skyrim was kind of like that without the survival aspect, and many other games that you could name, right? But I don't think they all have all of those aspects. So that's kind of what I'm hanging on to. Besides the story, hopefully being as amazing as it is in my mind.
Okay. Well, let's fast forward a bit and let's say, the time has come for you to release the game. What do you think is next for you? Are you going to keep developing that game itself, or are you going to move on to something else? What are you thinking?
If the day came where I released Riptide, yeah, no, I would definitely take, like it would be so important to me, right? Like that could be over a decade in the making, or over a decade of my life, right? So I would definitely spend, I don't know, maybe another 5 years making sure every bug was ironed out, everything was fixed, everything was working perfectly, exactly the way it's supposed to, so that anyone in the future wanted to play it, they wouldn't have any problems. That's the first thing I think I would do. And I do have many other game ideas. I love sci-fi, So there's something I would like to do in the future, but I've spent so much time on Riptide, this has to be the first. But I have other game ideas, for sure. Other stories.
Yeah, that's the problem with being a developer in that sense is the ideas quickly outpace the ability to make them, and that's.
It's so crazy, yeah.
I mean, I wish I could list out all the crazy ideas I've had, and then I'm like, I'm gonna do it, and then I sit down and watch a Unreal Engine 4 tutorial, and I'm like, oh god, well, how long? 20 minutes in? That's it? It's just my patience are roads away.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. I've actually been trying to move to Unreal Engine, and just being on their marketplace, like I haven't gotten past that. Like just setting up a 3D asset, I'm like, this is like relearning everything I know.
Well, I mean, speaking of Unreal, I mean, if you're comparing your experience in Unity to what you've seen in Unreal, are you going to eventually move to Unreal full time? Is that your goal, or what would be the reason why?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I do love Unity, and if it wasn't a game like Riptide or my sci-fi story or the horror games, I would consider Unity for their final product. But if I had the choice and if I had the team or whatever I needed, right, I absolutely no questions asked Unreal Engine 5. I just know it'll take me so long to be as. See, the problem with me is I know I can open Unity and I don't Google anything anymore. I can just go.
Okay.
Whatever I'm thinking, I can just create it. Right. So to go to Unreal Engine and be so lost and confused and need the documents and the videos and everything to help me, it's so hard, right? To move to that from the Unity editor where I can just go nuts, right? Even though it doesn't look as good or perform as good, it's still like,
If you were starting from scratch in your development career, would you still recommend starting with Unity, or would you say just go straight into Unreal?
Believe it or not, I would. I would recommend that you learn as much as you can with the Unity game engine. If you're by yourself or a small team, absolutely, I would say spend 2 years in Unity, learn as much as you can, and get the hell out of there. 'Cause 7 years in, right? I'm like, what do you want? Done. And yeah, it's really hard to get away from it, right? It's really hard to turn it off, and especially really hard to open a different program that I'm completely lost in. Very, very hard.
Interesting. Huh. What kind of?
It's like it's too much fun.
Yeah. I whenever Unity updates, do you just kind of run with it and absorb the update, or do you stay on older versions?
Oh, I stay on the older version. I mean, after a little bit, right, I'll upgrade, or I'll peek, right? Like I'll open the new one and be like, what's different? Okay, all right, fuck it, I'll stay, right? Or I might go, oh my god, they did this, I'm going back. So that's happened with Blender as well.
Huh.
Right?
Okay.
I still haven't gone to 4, but I haven't peaked at 4 either. Yeah, 100%. Like if I get too uncomfortable, and I'm like in the middle of something, right, I'll definitely go back. But if I'm starting something new, yeah, I'm a lot more inclined to be like, what's new here? Let's check it out.
Yeah, the last interview I did was somebody who was gamifying learning Blender, and I found that really interesting.
Right, I heard this.
Yeah, and it was. I don't think he may not be the first person to do it, but the way he's delivering it is really interesting, and I love the idea of, hey, you need to learn something, let's turn it into a game, and because there's just so much out there to dive into depending on what you want to specialize in. So, I mean, I think you're a little beyond that stage, but for anyone just starting out, that kind of thing is great.
I do love that idea too. That's something like I don't know where I stopped saying this because you just reminded me of it, but I used to always say that games can teach you so much. And when I first heard VR 2 coming out, someone was talking about making VR training games for like dangerous jobs or jobs that I don't know, like even like cooking in a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You can create a game to train someone how to do that stuff, so they know the terminology. They know, this is that, this goes there. I don't work in a kitchen, but you know what I mean. And I just thought, I thought that was really, really interesting that you wouldn't need to actually spend 2 weeks standing next to somebody else, right? All that time,
right?
Yeah, and just sit there with a headset on and be taught. I thought that was the most amazing thing.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that story you brought up about the person developing the Spanish game, and I just think that kind of stuff is amazing. When I was growing up as a kid, gamification for learning was awful. Like it was magic Magic School Bus and learn how to do
Yes.
math, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cringe. Well, I think stats and stuff like that in games has made people pretty
Yeah,
mathematically what's the word? Inclined, avid,
yeah, higher
adept.
aptitude there. One of the things I wanted to maybe throw your way for some feedback in your long term development of this game is create a mini game that people can't stop focusing on to even get to the main game. So it could be something
That's yeah.
like a chess tournament. It could be some kind of farming game where it's like, help, I need to farm these carrots, and how quickly and efficiently can you do it, or fishing. And then you bring your NPCs in it. So if you're doing a chessboard and you go to a local town and they're like a chess community and you can challenge people to play chess, and then you win culture points or money or whatever, and people recognize you through success on these mini games. I think that would be something unique to stand out.
Yeah, and 100%. This is like in the game design document. I'm so glad you said that though, because that's another game loop, right? And I actually I have a full document here. It used to be on my website, but it was way too much text
Yeah.
and very few pictures, right? And someone actually gave me some feedback and was like, "Dude, I just read all that, and I would literally want to go to bed right now." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Got it." But yeah, that was absolutely. It's in the documentation. That's going to happen, and not just chess. There's dice games. There's a lot of gambling games, dice games. There's card games. There's a monster card game, like how The Witcher had Gwent.
Yeah.
I've kind of created my own. That's a lot more like Hearthstone or Yu-Gi-Oh kind of style, and it's like kids in the world play it, and adults basically fight over the expensive cards in the black market kind of thing, right?
Okay. Huh,
But
that'd be
there's
interesting.
so that you can collect cards and play them and stuff like that. And then there's bigger mini games like you can get in the sword arena and sword fight somebody. There's
Okay.
archery tournaments, right, where you beat a certain distance away from the target, and whoever gets closer gains points. And yeah, there's a tournament like that. And I really because there's mounts in the game, so there has to be jousting, right? The Danians joust. There'd be jousting tournaments as well. And I would really like to make these quest lines too, like eventually, because this would be nuts. So if you would start a jousting tournament, or actually just start jousting, right? And after so many jousts or so many matches, someone comes out of nowhere and says, "Hey, there's going to be a tournament in this city if you want to go." And anyway, so you could go there at that date and start the tournament. And if you won, if you were the champion, you would actually get an item, a cloak for your horse or something like that, a suit of armor, whatever, whatever, whatever. But you would also get a skill, like one of those bonus skills I was talking about that you could
Mm-hmm.
use on horseback here to just like be this insane lunge or something like that.
That sounds really interesting, and it makes me think of horse development overall in video games. I remember hearing there was especially Reign of Kings. The developers came out and said, "Hey, horses in video games are really difficult to do." What has your
Yeah.
experience been with that?
So the thing is, like, if I know my third person player controller very well, the one that I use it in every single third person game I've ever made, and it's basically just it's a base code, and then you can build off of that so much, and pretty easily, at least me myself in the way I code, right? So in the third iteration of Riptide, I created my own, I literally modeled and textured my own horse, animated it, put it in the game, and programmed it directly to my own player controller, and that was quite simple, to be honest.
Yeah.
But last year, no, the year before last year, I for the first time ever saw the Malvar's horse riding system and tried it, and I was like, this is insanely smooth and realistic. And so I've tried to implement that into this, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not saying I might. I'm not sure, but I would like to create something way more like that, because what I had in the third iteration was like, yeah, it wasn't a realistically moving horse, but it was easy to put in the game and have you mount onto it and get off of it. You know what I mean? Use your weapons on or off of it, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and I mean they are right. Like it completely depends on how you code it initially, because if you make a multiplayer game and then decide to add horses later, that's probably very hard. Yeah, I would totally agree with that statement.
Okay, yeah,
So if they
putting
didn't
it in
think about
after.
that on like the right out of the gate, that probably became a very complicated task. Yeah,
Huh, interesting.
yeah, that needs to be like an initial thought. Mounts, absolutely. Pets, not so much because it's kind of just like a following AI, right? But if when you're gonna actually physically change like the whole height of the players' colliders and everything like that, and you know what I mean, like people are gonna have to swing at you differently, and there's so many different things that are going to come into play that you really need to think of that right out of the gate. But that's
Hmm.
my opinion on that.
Unfortunately, we can't. I can't talk to you all night. As much as I would love to, I got a
No
bazillion
problem, man. I realize
questions.
we've gone
Yeah.
pretty late. Yeah.
What would be some advice that you may give an up and coming developer? Like, is there something that you struggled on in particular, or something that you really thrived with? What would you tell somebody that you've never met before?
I would tell them don't get discouraged, and that's BS because you're going to.
Yeah.
But don't stay discouraged is what I would say. Like this is so hard. All of this is so hard. It's literally rocket science, right? I always say game dev, it's rocket science, but nobody gets hurt,
I'll say it's
right?
even harder.
Yeah, right. And yeah, it's literally it's just a really really complicated science, and it's going to be very hard to learn. You're going to be confused. You're going to be your eyes are going to be rolling back to your head. But if if it's something you really find amazing, something you find fun, even just the littlest things, every time you get discouraged, go back to something that you know. For me, it's been 3D art. I just go back to modeling, and I'll make what the hell ever. There was one year where I just made everything that I could possibly think of, one after the other, and put it up in the store.
Oh wow.
And right. So if it's programming, open up a user interface. Like don't overcomplicate it and just start programming buttons and sound effects, and you know what I mean. Just do something that's you love and that you know gets you excited and inspires you to actually keep going. Every time you get discouraged, I recommend doing that.
Well, that's fantastic. And, Matthias, this has been a great conversation to have with you today. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and just talk about your game for a little bit and talk about your development experience. Do you have a release date in mind, or do you think it's just going to be really fluid for a while?
Yeah. I don't have one in mind. I did have one last year, but obviously a lot changed, and so yeah, I really every studio will do this too. They'll be like, "This is the release date," and then the release date comes, and they're like, "Psych, this is really hard." So it gives a bit. But that's kind of the situation here. So I really can't give a date. But I wanted it to be this year, and I still do.
Okay.
Right. So given enough time, I know school's out for the summer for sure. So I should have a ton of time during the summer for sure. But not that I'm not going to be working on this until summer. It's just that the last couple of months, especially when I add something new or when I try to develop further, it's like one step forward, two steps back. So something happens, right? There's so many program systems in this project right now. It's mental. It's almost like I need to study them every time I sit down at the desk. That's how many there are.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like I sit down and break it every day. So I do think it's on the horizon, at least for this little demo, right? Not for the final project, because I would really, like I said, I would really like to have a team develop this in Unreal Engine 5 if that's ever possible. But we'll see how the demo goes, and maybe that gets me that.
Well, it sounds like your
Hopefully this year.
dedication level, you're going to get there, and I am really excited to see where you develop this game in the next 6 months or a year, and would even love to revisit an update. So keep up the great work.
Absolutely.
This has been a fantastic talk. So thank you so much for coming on Yeti Talks with me.
Thank you for having me, man. Seriously, and I am so sorry I was late today. But yeah, dude, anytime. This has been really great, and it's really awesome to meet you. Thank you so much.